Tim made it obvious that they were planning on engaging in certain activities with the other person, who they knew was 13 years old, and that their relationship to one another's age was irrelevant to them. This demonstrates a clear awareness of the minor's age and a desire to act improperly. At this point, 42-year-old Timothy Kyne realized he had been exposed. Timothy had attempted to meet up with the 13-year-old boy, but little did he know that John was a decoy set up by the Tekka team. A group of skilled professionals with experience catching cyber predators ran the decoy. After barely 1 week of online conversations, Timothy was seduced and later detained by the police. He was then brought to the police station where the questioning started. Tim replied no when the investigator asked whether he knew why he was there. Next, the police questioned Tim about why he had to come to Holland Heights that evening. Tim was hesitant to mention that he had made plans to meet someone he had met online. Instead, he casually said they were going to the movies together while he was nearby. He concluded his statement with a tense yeah. Tim decides to play the fool and act as though he has no idea he has done anything wrong. It's a common opening gambit that many people employ in these circumstances. However, Tim's following statement, which is quite unusual, distinguishes him. When Tim was questioned about the person he intended to meet, he recalled a man named John but could not recall his last name. When questioned about John's age, Tim feigned ignorance and said he thought John was around 18. Tim acknowledged meeting John online and he gave a positive answer when asked if he frequently chats online. Tim confidently states that John was 18 years old, highlighting that this is in accordance with Kentucky's legal age of consent, as here is where their encounter took place. This type of response, however, is frequently viewed as suspicious because it is generally accepted that people who are open to seeing and having activities with an 18-year-old may also be open to meeting others who are younger, possibly even under the age of 17. Tim has shown that chat logs by the officer, which detailed their back-and-forth communication. The individual Tim was talking to in the chat log mentioned being 13 years old. Tim denies any intention of meeting someone that young, stating that it is too young for him. Tim's texts make evident an inconsistency in John's claims, even though John explicitly said he was 13. Although he admits that 13 is too young, he later says he doesn't care about age and is more interested in the individual. When questioned about his conversation with John, Tim replies that they don't have much in common. Tim claims that they only connected online, and from there things developed. When asked whether they had anything in common, Tim mentions that John appeared decent. It becomes evident that Tim deliberately provides brief and ambiguous answers to conceal the content of his messages. Aware of his trouble, Tim's strategy is to convince the detectives that his intentions are innocent and unrelated to the alleged misconduct. However, the police are confident that they possess sufficient evidence to hold him accountable. The detective discusses a possible explanation for Tim's contact with John after reviewing some of the chat logs and emphasizing underlying homosexuality-related concerns. Tim acknowledges that it might have been a contributing factor. Still, he emphasizes that if John had declared his age as claimed, he would never have engaged in inappropriate behavior. Tim tells the detective that he is interested in John because of his personality, but the detective takes Tim's claim seriously and continues his investigation. Numerous commentators have noted that the detective's comments in this setting can seem unrelated to the goal to the interview. However, it's essential to consider the possibility that the query was presented purposely to elicit Tom's self-incriminating remarks. In addition, Tim's relationship with John might have implied specific intentions of his interest in him, which was entirely motivated by John's homosexuality. However, the gravity of the dispute is diminished when it realized that both people met on gay.com, a website specifically created for LGBTQ community. The detective tries to reassure Tim that they're not trying to trick him or play mental games with him. Instead, their main goal is to find the reason for the issue and offer an explanation. The detective urges Tim to tell the truth about what happened, and the detective stresses the value of clarity. Tim accepts the detective's message and clarifies that the meeting is only about getting to know someone and possibly establishing a friendship or love connection. Tim and the police officers engage in further conversation, with Tim reiterating that the meetup had no specific intentions and that he was unaware of the guy's age. However, Tim shows visible discomfort as the officers persistently repeat the same questions. Finally, sensing the need to increase the pressure, the officers intensify their approach to elicit a confession or several more information from Tim. The detectives present Tim with the chat logs evidence highlighting the numerous instances in which he expressively acknowledged John's age of 13. They point out specific conversations about their planned meeting, including discussions about staying for the entire weekend and engaging in intimate activities. The detectives draw attention to Tim's concern over John's mother's absence and his admission that he began engaging in similar behaviors at a young age. The detectives interrupt Tim's attempts to defend himself and declare their interest before outlining the evidence. They strongly claim that Tim had planned to engage in inappropriate behaviors with the 13-year-old for the entire weekend. They refute Tim's assertion that it was a joke and express their displeasure with his evasive behavior. The detectives insist on talking about Tim's simple goals and adamantly state that they are no longer interested in playing trickery games, implying that he might be involved in illegal activity. Since all of the texts to which the detectives are referring are open to the public, this makes it easy to see how explicit and unsettling they are. For example, Tim claimed that he would do anything for John and frequently showed love throughout their discussions, including a wish to date him. They talked openly about things like making out, cuddling, and more. In addition, Tim misrepresented his age and said many strange things. It is feasible for an experienced legal team to contend in court that Tim mistook or completely ignored John's age. Tim expressively indicated that if he had realized John was only 13, he would not have participated in any inappropriate activities, which lends credence to his allegation. However, numerous additional texts from Tim strongly suggest that he was fully aware of John's age and that it was even his primary concern. Tim's remarks suggest that he didn't mean them, but his other messages' connotations could be used to refute this assertion. Tim tries to excuse himself by saying that he would have known if John had been underage, but he was unaware because the website stated an older age. He argues that everyone online lies, which justifies his behavior. The police pointed out that he did not voice any worry about John's age once they started talking, and he learned that he was 13 years old. Tim acknowledges his mistake but maintains no issue with the age gap. Tim admits that they chatted about various issues when the detectives questioned him about high school and inquired about gay males and girls at John's school. Tim's attitude has drastically shifted over the last few minutes. His posture has changed from being loose and open to being stiff and upright. He appears pretty uncomfortable, as evidenced by his crossed arms and elevated shoulders. Tim, becoming increasingly restless, decides to take off his jacket in an unconscious effort to feel better. He is anxious and wants to leave the contact, as evidenced by his crossed legs and restless feet. The detectives realize that their current strategy is not producing any noticeable progress after nearly an hour of questioning. They decide to temporarily step out, using his opportunity to strategize their next move. Leaving Tim alone in the room allows him to dwell on the gravity of the situation, intensifying his anxiety and uncertainty. Following an hour of anticipation, the detectives eventually return to continue the interrogation. Tim adamantly rejects the accusation that he intentionally interacted with a child and maintains that he would never have done anything improper. However, the detectives point out a particular discussion in which Tim brought up the Easter Bunny and inquired about John's continued belief in it. In addition, they draw attention to the blatant discrepancy between Tim's assertions and his contacts with John, which demonstrates that he was aware of John's youth. The detectives emphasize the fundamental nature of the evidence, claiming that any judge or jury would view the discussions as supporting evidence of Tim's motives. They compel Tim to grasp the gravity of the circumstance and the possible legal repercussions. Tim tries to defend himself by providing details from John's profile that make him think John is older. The investigators react by drawing attention to John's Yahoo profile's conflicting age claims. They push Tim to face the truth of his actions and the repercussions they have. Tim apologizes and acknowledges his mistake, but the detectives maintain that he should have seen the warning that John wasn't of legal age. Moreover, they contend that Tim's awareness of John's age and their conversations about driving and school should have raised questions. Nevertheless, the investigators keep pressuring Tim to admit he is aware of John's age, emphasizing the significance of accepting accountability for his deeds. The detectives were sure of their case against Tim despite Tim's refusal to confess or cooperate. Timothy Kyne was thus charged with the felony offense of traveling over state lines to have sex with a child. He was later found guilty and sentenced to 46 months in jail and 20 years of probation. In addition, he was listed as a sex offender, which would be with him forever.